It's personal. If people understood their health, they would protect it at all costs. I grew up visiting doctors, hospitals, and clinics. Unfortunately, I witnessed my parents being wheeled off to surgeries way too many times. I seen the fear that came across their face when they received more bad news about their health. I witnessed the financial and the emotional effects that it had on them and our family. I grew up as a Midwest farm boy in a family that knows all too well how health can affect day-to-day life. We had more than our fair share of challenges. I watched my family struggle physically, emotionally, and financially. I learned about health and the many challenges it can bring in a way that many don't understand until it happens to them. It changed me. It motivated me to want to make a difference. I became determined to use my life experiences to re-engineer healthcare so that others don't have to go through the same kind of pain and suffering that my family went through. It began with my mother. She was born with rickets, a condition in which the bones fail to absorb calcium. They become softened and weakened, leading to skeletal deformities, muscle weakness, and pain in the spine, hips, and legs. In her childhood, she received an overdose of calcium prescribed by her doctor to help correct the issue. Unfortunately, she went into kidney failure and lost both kidneys. At 25, she had her second kidney transplant. I was only 3 years old. She continued to face health challenges as a result of rickets and subsequently endured 35 more surgeries. There was one particular surgery that struck a chord. Since childhood, her legs were bowed and unequal in length. It wasn't until her early 50s and prior to receiving knee replacements that she was finally able to have leg surgery for a second time to correct the deformities. I stopped by the hospital later that day. My dad was down at the cafeteria, so it was just Mom and me. I asked her how she was doing. She became teary-eyed, and all I could think at the moment was, now what? What went wrong? Hasn't she suffered enough? As I walked closer, she pulled the sheet from her legs and said, "My legs are straight." Her tears were of pure joy. For the first time in her life, at 50, her legs were straight and equal in length. As I left the hospital, I thought about how most of us take our health for granted. How selfish we must be to not appreciate the simple things like having straight legs or being able to walk. At the age of 32, my father found himself being the primary caretaker and provider for our family. Growing up on the farm, he worked hard and later in life worked a second job in construction to support our family. Unfortunately, my father, like many young adults, felt invincible and was burning the candle at both ends. His attitude and impatience caused him to rupture his back while lifting a portable welder. He endured 3 surgeries, which rendered his condition worse over time and was never able to return to work. In his early 50s, he suffered a major heart attack. It was out of sight, out of mind. He was not obese, nor a smoker, had an occasional drink, was about 10 pounds over a healthy weight, and his eating habits were nothing that would make a dietitian jealous. Most of my uncles had heart disease or died as a result. It's common on my father's side. Then there was me. I became interested in my health at an early age. As a teenager, I found a sense of accomplishment in weight training thanks to high school PE. It was at one place where I had control of how hard I worked and could influence my health in a proactive way. Like many young men, I appreciated the physical change, but within a few years, it was the mental health and self-confidence that became the primary benefit and motivator. I then began referring to the physical change as a side effect, avoided cafeteria food for meal shakes, and was determined to live my life in a way that would keep me healthy. As an adult, I landed a career in the insurance industry focused on employer benefit programs. It only took a few years to realize that many insurance claims were self-induced by the employee. In many cases, the injuries and illness could have been avoided or improved through personal choice and effort. I began to ask, why aren't these employees applying wellness principles to avoid unnecessary pain and suffering? To answer this question, I began to reflect upon my family. My mother was born with a health condition that was no fault of her own. My father's injury was self-induced, and I was a young, healthy individual putting forth effort every day to influence my health. I wondered, how do you create a system that can accommodate individuals with a variety of different abilities and needs based upon their own circumstances? The answer came from my mother. It was her attitude, determination, and effort to focus on what she could influence so her condition would not become worse. This became the essence of LifeCore. I remember coming home from school every day and going swimming with my mother because it was the only kind of low-impact exercise she could do. This powerful insight showed me that regardless of your health status, you can always put forth effort to influence your health moving forward and make a difference. Over the years, my mother incorporated natural approaches to care, such as acupuncture, massage, and stretch therapy. This has helped significantly as age and transplant medications take their toll. Unfortunately, they have been limited in affordability and options. What if she would have had access to these options years ago? Would have it helped to improve her health outcomes? Why doesn't her insurance support this kind of proactive care? Reflecting back on my father's situation of a self-induced injury and heart disease, I asked, what if there was a system that provided access to education, application, and guidance on prevention? Simple things like core strengthening or lifting with your legs, things that could have prevented his injury. Would my father have changed his ways if the cost of his insurance was determined by his effort to avoid that health risk? Today, I'm young, healthy, and put forth effort every day to help reduce my risk of incurring injury or suffering from heart disease like my father and his family. I am the first generation to live a completely different lifestyle focused on prevention and healthy living as a way of life. As for the insurance component, I understood the concept of insurance and was happy to pay in and not collect, knowing that people like my mother benefited. I know the pain and suffering that comes with needing to use insurance because it usually means something unpleasant is happening. Throughout my 20 years in the insurance industry, I continued to notice fewer employees being health conscious, and as a result, insurance premiums began to increase. Employee populations soon divided. Overall, less employees were putting forth effort to influence their health, and the health-conscious employees who were putting forth effort every day continued to experience rising costs, and there was nothing they could do about it. I began to question employee benefits. It was not making sense. Why was a single employer making insurance decisions for all of their employees? How could they possibly know what each employee needed or wanted? Why weren't more employees putting forth effort? And why were those putting forth effort not experiencing reduced premiums or being rewarded for those efforts? I learned that employee benefits were born out of World War II and the Stabilization Act of 1942. It no longer makes sense, and it is not applicable in today's market. I learned from my mother that when my father went to work for a home builder prior to her transplant, that his employer was offering benefits to her and my father at no cost. At that time, my mother had a private Blue Cross and Blue Shield health plan that my parents paid for each month. Because she had worked briefly for an insurance company, she knew that if she dropped the private health plan to be covered at no cost on the employer plan, that she would likely never get private insurance again. Despite being young and barely making ends meet, they continue to pay the premium out of their pocket. She still has that insurance today. Had they made a different decision and taken the employer plan at no cost to them, it is likely this story would be very different. My mother chose to keep her private insurance, and it gave her access to the best care available, and still does so today. This reason alone is why employer-based benefits do not benefit employees. The individual consumer should be able to decide what is best for them. Our attitude, determination, and effort to focus on what we can influence is the one common denominator amongst all of us. The difference is whether we choose to make the effort or not. My years as a child and as an adult have served as a lifetime of experience and understanding of healthcare, not just from the business side, but more importantly, the human element. The emotional and financial effects can be difficult, and I wish for no one to go through such pain and suffering. You have a choice. That is why I started LifeCore. People need to understand that healthcare is not a system, but it's a choice we make. Health professionals and insurance need to support our choices and protect us against the catastrophic events. It is only us that can care for our health. I know all too well what my family's been through, and I don't want anyone else to go through it if they can prevent it. So why the passion for LifeCore? For you. Thank you for your efforts and your time to learn about LifeCore, what we're doing and why we do it, and your interest in certainly the personal story behind all of this. When we're talking the re-engineering healthcare, there are business components, but most importantly, there's the human component. The why is for you, and as the beneficiary of a re-engineering healthcare, we are asking for your involvement, to give you that opportunity to share and participate, whether that's financially from a contribution standpoint or whether that's simply sharing this message, knowing that change is only going to come from all of us getting involved and getting behind something that we believe in. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for your efforts. And as we grow as an organization and change, when we're out and about, we hope that you'll approach us and share with us your involvement, whether it's having shared this message or making a contribution, whatever it may be. Please feel free to approach us, say hi, share your story, because it is your stories that also motivate us to become the company that we want to become and to change healthcare for all the right reasons, and that is for you. Thank you.